Hey everybody, Eric Dorward here with the Spartan Rocketry Club, continuing right on into the next segment of my build here of the Estes SpaceShipOne. I am still waiting on what I built last time to dry, but I can keep on going here. In the intervening time, I've only really done one thing, and that was I took the main body tube here and I used the template, the line template here. You can see I've already taped it up and removed it, and I added on the lines for the wings and whatever plastic part line is. We'll find out, I guess, sooner rather than later. Anyway, the next thing that needs to be done is actually going back to the fins, the balsa bits. I have sanded these down a little bit, but it turns out this requires some beveling to be done because the fins are going to get attached to that body tube, not at a right angle, I assume. So they're going to have to be beveled. Now, the important part here is, well, they aren't going to be identical, right? Because there's a left fin and there's a right fin, and they each need to be beveled basically in opposite directions. So they should not be identical. The instructions say that you should identify one as being L and one as being R. I suspect, well, it doesn't, they're identical at the moment, right? So it doesn't truly matter. I'm going to, well, I'm just going to make mine look like theirs. So this is the way the diagram is drawn in, or the diagram is drawn in the instructions. You know, right here. The one that's well, the one that's labeled L right here is held like this. So I'm going to call this one L, and I'm very gently going to put an L on that. Right, and then the right one then should be like this. And I'm going to label that one very lightly R. Don't push here because, as sad as it is, a pencil can deform balsa pretty easily. Alright, so now that I've labeled them, I am going to sand them. I'm going to sand a 60-degree angle in. Now, there is a guide in the instructions that's I'm going to compare after the fact, but you know, a 60-degree angle is 1/3 of the way over, right? So it should look something like this. So I'm going to just hold it like this, more or less. And it says curved point goes to the rear. Alright, well that's fine. And I'm just going to go back and forth, trying to go in as straight a line as I can. Okay, let's see how I did. The goal is that this angle needs to get from one edge all the way over to the other, and I've gone through somewhere between, well, it wasn't consistent. It's kind of rounded like this, and that's not the wood, that's me, apparently. So it's not consistent. It's about halfway through at the thickest part, so I'm going to continue on, slowly but surely. I suspect that you can see I have a bit of a curve inadvertently on the sandpaper, so I think that's probably why I ended up with somewhat curved bevel here. I think that's just the way my arm is going. Yeah, because I'm moving more like a windshield wiper than going straight across, so let's try to fix that. I have some angle in here, but I'm pretty sure it's not steep enough. But you can compare. That's what this tool here is for, or this guide. Yeah, I am not steep enough. My angle is probably like 75. So I need to kind of shallow things out a little bit. I'm gonna adjust things so that it's more like this. Better. So see here, it's still right in here. It's not quite right yet. So that looks better. Checking it against the gauge here. I can only really check one side of it, and it looks, it's not perfect, but it looks pretty good. I'm pleased with that. I can flip it over and check the other side, I guess, but that's probably not going to tell me what I really want to know. But we'll say this one's good. Now, I normally wouldn't do another identical thing, right? On camera, I typically don't, but remember, this is not identical. I was holding the left one like this, I'm going to hold the right one like this. That's why I wrote the letter on this side, so I could see it. So I'm going to repeat this process more or less, but sanding so that I end up creating an angle on the other side of the wood. Again, I want the curved part facing to my left, and I should be able to see the R, so like this. Let's take a look. I've gone about halfway through. This angle looks kind of decent, but there's a little bit of wonkiness here in the wood. Remember I did over slice there. I sliced into it a little bit, but I don't think that's what's happening here. I'm just going to sand with my sandpaper right here on this spot to try to smooth that out, whatever is going on there. I'm not sure what that was. Alright, so that's great. Let's then bring back our guide here, and I'm going to test this angle. Looks like it could use a little bit more, but it's pretty close, so I shouldn't need to do a whole lot more sanding here. This part, I'll just sand this again a little bit by hand. Alright. Hopefully this is adequate now. Yeah, that looks like it should do. Maybe actually a little bit more. No, I'm pleased with that. That should be alright. Okay, so that's the beveling. That's super fun. These don't actually, I'm not going to be attaching them for a bit. So I'm going to just keep them out of the way. And they are labeled, so I will not forget what's what. I shouldn't, the other thing that I didn't do that I would typically do is I didn't airfoil or round either of these fins. The instructions don't say to, so there might be a reason for that. So later I might decide that needs to get done, but for now I think we're good with that. Alright. The last thing that I'm going to bother with right now, and then I really do need to let things rest and dry before I do anything else, is I'm going to build this little jig. And this is because the fins are, well, fins are wings, And because they are beveled and they are not attached at right angles, we don't need, but we really want a jig to help hold everything in place. So that's what this cardstock, the excess cardstock here is for. We're gonna build a, it's very easy construction for these things, but it is very nice to have. And it's gonna hold all the pieces in place for us while the glue dries, because it's not going to be at a nice right angle. Otherwise, this would be a very difficult prospect to get it to hold just the right way in just the right place. I am cutting these again. I typically don't, but there is good reason. These little bits need to come out too, which is kind of annoying. I suspect they might just pop out if I wanted to. Yeah, I'm going to use the blade to just kind of push them. Yeah, they just fall right out when you push them with the blade. Same thing over here. Again, just be careful. It is a blade, even though you're using it to push. I'm using it to push. Alright, little tiny pieces of garbage. That's super fun. And then these are the legs that are going to hold the thing together. Okay. I did cut these because I don't want to bend them. Well, I'm going to try to keep the bending to a minimum anyway. It's probably unavoidable that they will get a little bit bent. And they are only cardstock after all. That's good. Last one. Alright. So I do have a bunch of jigs that Estes has made. A lot of them, like this one, is balsa. I guess this one doesn't really require it. And this goes together like a bit of a jigsaw puzzle. So I'm going to put the feet in like so. Might as well put both of the legs for this side together. And then the other side. Yeah. There we go. Push it down so that it's flush. And this is, the purpose of this is going to hold the body too, right? But it's going to have to slide in. This is going to be a snug fit apparently. If I build it right, then the little arms here should be right at the fin lines that I drew using the diagram, and it's pretty close. Yeah, that's pretty good. Alright, so I'm going to remove this. I don't want that in there right now, but that is interesting that actually it's going to overcompensate. The instructions don't say to glue this together, because it does kind of just fit together nicely. I am going to actually tack this together in a couple spots though. I'm not going to glue it everywhere, but I would like this to be a little bit more rigid. So I'm going to put a little seam of glue in each of these. So 4 places, I think, and that should be plenty. The interior or exterior, it doesn't really matter. You could put there, tons of joints you could fill in, but I don't think it's going to make that big of a difference which ones you choose. In fact, I'm quite confident it will not. Did I miss one? Oh no, there it is. I had it on the interiors of this one and the exteriors of the other, but that should be fine. Alright, I'm just going to let that dry. Again, it doesn't really need it, but it wouldn't hurt. Lovely. Okay, so that wraps up most of the things that I can do right now. The only other thing I can think of to do right now, since I have the time, is, well, let's add the clay to the nose cone. It's always nice to get that done while you're thinking about it. So there's the clay. Again, this is a 20-year-old kit. the clay is actually surprisingly moist still, it seems, which is nice. If it were a brick, well, then I would have to go acquire some. I've certainly done that in the past. You know, any kind of modeling clay would be an expensive option, but if you have it, you don't mind parting with it, then it's fine. I've used like terracotta for some reason, just sitting in my house, so we use that. I've used that. Again, it doesn't really make much of a difference what you use. This stuff is nice, I guess. I'm not entirely sure why Estes chose this particular kind, but it doesn't really matter as long as it's clay. Alright, so we're going to roll it up into snakes, and then in go the snakes. And then, this is my gluing stick. I don't think I really want to use that. That's a little too feeble. That's too wide. How about this one? There we go. This is just a scrap ball so that I have lying around. This actually is a little... I don't really love this. This feels flimsy. How about that one? That's great. Alright, and the point is to just ram it home. You want it in the nose cone as far up as it'll go. And tamp it in so it doesn't fall out later or get dislodged, which is a distinct possibility. You know, if you do this right, it's entirely possible that it'll fall out anyway. It's not like it's glued in. The only thing holding it in is the pressure of me pushing it in with the stick and the fact that it is kind of tacky. If you really cared, if you really needed it to get all the way down into the nose cone and stay there, I've seen people use a little bit of epoxy, but that seems like complete overkill for our needs here. This is a model rocket. It's running off of model engines, a C on the high end of things, so I don't think we need to worry about that too much. Alright. This actually has big enough bore, a hole in the nose cone. You can actually look down it. You can't always, but that looks, looking down into it, I don't know if you can see anything or not, but it seems alright. I'm just going to wrap this up quickly. It doesn't take all that long. In fact, the size of the snakes I made was probably overkill, and I'm going to put both of them in. Alright, now, there we go. And tamp. You can actually, this is big enough so you can see down the side of it, but in the cases that it isn't, I can actually see there's a dark mark here. That's part of the clay. So you can see it through the translucent nose cone. And you can also see there's a very dark spot where I have pushed the clay into the nose. So even if you couldn't necessarily look down and see what's going on, there are ways to get around that. And you do want it packed in as far as you can get it. You don't spend a lot of time on this. It's not really worth, like, oh, it's not flat and perfectly down there. Well, that's not really going to make much of a difference. Alright, taking a peek, it looks passable. Yeah, I'm just going to ram it down a little bit on the edges here where I can see it's a little inconsistent. Alright, and then just kind of pack it in. That looks reasonably good. Alright, that's good. I'm actually going to put this in here for the time being. I don't know if this got deformed at all. It's entirely possible because it's so old. It could have been deformed in the packaging. So I'm going to leave these together. If there were any deformity, keeping the nose cone and the back part should probably help with that. Alright, so glue needs to dry a little bit, and then I should be ready for the next phase, which is to start construction. Alright, so I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.